All right, the Tigers take the opener of a 4-game set against the Twins. How about Tarik Skubal dazzling on the mound for Detroit? 5 innings of work, and he kept the Twins scoreless. We break it all down on our first ever Locked On Tigers postcast, and that is next. Let's get it going.
You are Locked On Tigers postcast, part of Locked On Sports Detroit on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Tigers postcast. You are Locked On Tigers. I am your host, Jake Riepma, formerly with the flagship 97.1 The Ticket, now the host of Locked On Detroit postcast. Fired up to be with you. And what a fun venture we have here with Locked On Detroit. Hope you'll join me after every Tigers game to break it all down and talk a little Tigers baseball, because it's been fun in the early going, has it not? On today's show, we are going to discuss that impressive performance by none other than who I believe is becoming a bona fide ace in Major League Baseball, Tarik Skubal. And you check the DraftKings odds, and that guy is at or near the top of the list of favorites in the Cy Young. I know, relax. We're in April here, but another impressive performance for Tarik Skubal, and the offense came alive, 8 runs. And as I've been prepping and preparing for what I want to say on the first ever Tigers postcast, the offense has been on my mind as an area of concern. And based on historical data of the early season, I think I was very much justified in being concerned with the offense. But how about today? 8 runs tonight against a Minnesota Twins team that is banged up. They're struggling. Obviously, we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But great to see the offense put out 8 runs for the Tigers today. And when you got an ace like Tarik Skubal on the mound, that is plenty. And, I had the headlines. This is how it always goes. You've got the third portion of your show all ready to go, especially, first broadcast. And we're thinking, okay, what's a nice, easy topic we can bring it home with? And I thought the bullpen. The bullpen's been great. I'm writing it in the 8th inning. We're up 8-0. And what does my guy Will Vest go and do? Well, he gives up 2 in the 9th for the only 2 runs of the game for the Minnesota Twins. So scratch that 9th inning. We're going to talk about the bullpen up until that 9th inning, because I thought Alex Faedo was really, really good. But before we go any further, today's episode is made possible by FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the title sponsor of today's episode. Fired up to have them on board as well. And with FanDuel, make sure you make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started for that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Tarik Skubal as the headline of today's win for the Detroit Tigers. Again, he goes 5 innings pitched, scoreless 5 innings. He struck out 5, did walk 2. However, with Skubal, I think what's so impressive about what he's been able to do in the early going, it's more than just taking the mound as an ace, but really the presence he brings. And go back to that inning. I made some notes here. That inning where it looked like it might get away from him. I don't want to say away from him, but he was pitching around traffic in that 4th inning. You had the throwing error by Javi Baez. You had a couple of runners on. It looks like there was some disagreements with home plate umpire. And I don't want to say the old Skubal, but I was so impressed with how he was able to pitch around the traffic on the bases. He was able to buckle down. It took a couple of mound visits, but instead of going haywire and maybe losing composure with some calls that went against him, he was really, really impressive in the way he stayed the course, the way he continued to battle out on the mound. And I thought Jake Rogers did a great job of calling the game. And if you listen to the Tigers telecast, I thought Jason Benetti and, of course, Dan Petrie did a good job of outlining the pitch in the full arsenal, as our great friend Jim Price, the late Jim Price would say, working with a full arsenal out there, and just how Tarik Skubal was able to utilize a number of different components to his pitching arsenal that made him so effective again tonight. And it's worth noting the Tigers are 3-0 in games that Skubal starts. So when you got Skubal on the mound, you're going to give your team a great chance to win. I thought that was evident today as Tarik Skubal continued to dazzle. And I know, listen, 5 innings pitch. I'm sure if you ask him post-game, I'm sure his post-game comments are going on the air for Bally Sports as we speak, that he'll probably allude to something of wanting to go more, but let's pump the brakes a little bit. It's early April. It was freezing out there tonight. You saw Javi Baez with the turtleneck and the headgear on to try and stay warm. So not ideal pitching conditions. We always talk about how tough it is to hit in cold weather, but it's also difficult to pitch in cold weather. So tremendous job by Tarik Skubal as well. Let me know what you think in the comments for Tarik Skubal's performance. And listen, I'm not going to get crazy with the betting odds, and I think I was on the Tarik Skubal hype train from the very beginning as a legitimate Cy Young candidate, but here we are in mid-April, and after just 3 starts, he's one of the favorites, according to FanDuel, to be the Cy Young in the American League. But again, let's relax a little bit, Jake. Pump the brakes. But so glad to have you along for our first ever Tigers postcast. We're going to be doing this after every single Tigers game. And you know what? Bear with me as we work through a couple of the things. First show, we're knocking off the rust. The Tigers made it easy on me with an 8-2 win over the Twins. And let's talk about that upcoming schedule for a little bit, because with Skubal going today, or tonight, I should say, you got the doubleheader tomorrow and then the series finale on Sunday. And it was so crucial for Skubal to put forth a quality start like he did. I know technically the term quality start would imply 6 innings, but you get my drift. 5 innings of shutout baseball. Faedo did a good job in relief. And you look at that box score for the Tigers and compare it to the Twins in the pitching category. Yeah, that's right. The Twins are using a lot more pitchers than the Tigers did. Faedo went the 2 innings in relief, followed by Chafin. And my man, Will Vest, you ruined the shutout, and I'm not going to get all over Will Vest, but 1 inning pitch, just the 3 hits and the 2 runs, 2 of them being earned. So you take away that 9th inning, and it's another solid performance from the Tigers pitching staff, which we know is the strength of this team. It's the strength and the identity of this team. The bullpen plays a huge part in that, but anytime you've got your ace on the bump like the Tigers did in Tarik Skubal, great to get that first win in the series, first win of the season series. Remember the story from last year. The Tigers played great against the American League Central. It was the rest of Major League Baseball that they struggled with. So I know when you can get those in-division wins, it's important. And even in the month of April, I said this to a friend the other day, it's not like the wins in April don't count as much as the wins in June or July or in the dog days of summer. So if we're going to play the Twins 7 out of the next 11 games, let's go ahead and win some. And I thought tonight was certainly a huge step forward in that regard. So once again, I am your host of the Locked On Tigers postcast, Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter, or unfollow me for that matter, at Jake_Riepma, always tweeting about Detroit sports, the good, the bad, the ugly. And for today's purpose, of course, we are talking Tigers. Hope you'll join me after every single Tigers game as we break it down on the Tigers postcast. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It is free, doesn't cost you anything. And make sure you stay up to date for all of our Tigers postcasts here on the Locked On Detroit channel. Now, with that said, Tarik Skubal goes 5 innings of shutout baseball. He struck out 5, walked 2, and did not give up an earned run. Also made the note he had 15 chase rates, which was impressive by any regard. Tarik Skubal, the ace for the Tigers, starting this series out in the right way with 5 innings of scoreless baseball, and the Tigers win it 8-2. Now, with that said, before we go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor. And that is Ibotta. That's right. Spring has sprung. I don't care if the weather was chilly at Comerica Park here this evening, but spring has sprung no matter what the weather is saying. And that means stocking up on cleaning supplies or swapping out your winter clothes for new spring clothes. Make sure you're using that Ibotta app and get real cash back with every purchase. That's right, real cash back using the Ibotta app. It's a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make the most and understand that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. I'm definitely gonna have to buy some of those beauty supplies, obviously with the face for radio. But right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners just $5 just for trying Ibotta, using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, let's talk a little bit about this solid offensive performance. And I think we have to begin with the way the game began. In the bottom of the first inning, Mark Canha, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite players for this Detroit Tigers team, went yard on a chilly night, and it looked like the Tigers might be off and running against Lopez for the Twins, and had a little bit going in that first inning until what I wrote down in my notes. Let me make sure I say this correctly. An egregious base running blunder by Tarik Carpenter, who made the last out at third. He was out by 20 feet. It wasn't even close. And the Tigers settle for one run in that first inning. But a lot to make from the offense on this performance. An 8-2 win over the Tigers. I really like the way Riley Greene looked in the batter's box. He had the RBI double that scored Jake Rogers, which was also kind of hilarious. And don't take this as being mean. I think we can all get a good chuckle seeing Jake Rogers gunning it around third and getting a move on it. That helped the Tigers offense. And again, it just felt like there was better at bats. Now, I want to talk about Spencer Torkerlson for a little bit, because obviously his struggles have been a topic of conversation here in the early going. But 2 more hits today, 2 RBIs, one of them, as Jason Benetti perfectly put it on the broadcast, a cue shot. He called it off the end of the bat. He called it a croquet shot that was just spinning and spinning and spinning with an exit velo of 30 miles per hour. That's right, an exit velo of 30 miles per hour. He called it the construction zone single RBI, but it doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to draw a picture on the score sheet. Spencer Torkerlson contributing to the offense with 2 RBIs. Let me know what you think about Torkelson's start and really this offense in general. What's your concern level? I mentioned it in the open before tonight's show, and as I follow this team game by game, going through the Locked On training, getting ready for this first live broadcast, I kept making note of what topics I'd want to discuss, and the offense was always at the area of a concern for me. And some would say that this offense was certainly the weakness of this Tigers team. But when you put out 8 runs in a chilly night like they did tonight, you feel a little bit better. Now, again, this Twins team very much banged up. Carlos Correa left the game with a strained oblique, and that's one of several Twins injuries that is plaguing this team in the early going. And, that's part of that is baseball, but I took a picture of the graphic of all the players that the Twins are missing. Justin Topa, the list goes on. The point being, you got Royce Lewis, Max Kepler. Again, I don't want to name every single player that the Twins are missing because of injuries, but that's a part of the conversation here, that this is a beat up Twins team that you got to take advantage of with 4 games at home here, including that doubleheader tomorrow. So liked what I saw at the plate from Spencer Torkerlson. And 2 more hits for Tarik Carpenter as well. Vierling got into the action with that late RBI double. I believe that was in the 8th inning. But point being, you saw a lot of extra base hits, Vierling with the double. You also saw Riley Greene with the double. Mark Canha had a home run. I mentioned that. I should also mention that was Canha's third home run in just 12 games. So he is off to a hot start, which this Tigers team needs, right? We've talked about it at length, or I've talked about it at length. Obviously, this being the first show, Jake Riepma, who'd you talk to about it? Listen, friends and everything else. Listen, I've talked to the disappointing nature of why Scott Harris doesn't feel that this team needed a big bat in the middle of the lineup. Obviously, Matt Chapman and JD Martinez were the two that immediately come to mind, that you had the room to bring them in. You had the payroll to do so, and they just elected not to. But I guess that's in the rearview mirror. We're going to continue looking through the windshield and talk positively about this offense, because they certainly deserve it with what they put forward to this evening here against the Minnesota Twins. So I'm hoping to see more of that. And again, also adding that a couple of runs scored from Jake Rogers. I mentioned he called a great game behind the plate as well. Riley Greene scored 2 runs. Mark Canha scored 2 runs. And there was always motion on the base paths, right? There was the Twins pitching staff pitching with runners on, and a lot in which the Tigers offense didn't always knock the cover off the baseball, and how many times we say it in baseball, it's better to be lucky than good. Torkelson's infield single is an example of that. They had a couple other jam job bloop hits, but at the end of the day, when you have your ace on the mound, you score early with the Mark Canha home run, you put pressure on the opposition, and your bullpen, minus the 9th inning, pitches well. That's a recipe for success and a recipe to sustain over the course of this early portion of the season in the month of April, where we all know how much of a struggle it's been for the Tigers getting off to slow starts in recent years. So liked what I saw from the offense. Want to see more of that in the next couple of games. As I mentioned, a homestand for the Tigers. They've got the 4 against the Twins, followed by 4 more against the defending World Series champs when the Texas Rangers come to town. Then it's on the road to take on the Minnesota Twins. But Tigers offense scores 8 runs in an 8-2 win over the Minnesota Twins. Detroit now 8-4. They're 2-2 at home. Minnesota 3-3 on the road, 4-7. I mentioned the injuries. They continue to struggle, and it doesn't feel better when you have your star shortstop, Carlos Correa, leave in the middle of the game with that oblique injury. So we'll continue to monitor that as the series goes along. And hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this edition of our Tigers postcast. That's right, Locked On Detroit postcast. Going to be with you all season long, recapping Tigers baseball. Fired up to be with you because I bleed Detroit sports. It's what I'm most passionate about. I mentioned in the open, formerly with 97.1 The Ticket, now fired up to be with Locked On, credentialed last year in the clubhouse, now get a chance to bring my voice to the postgame airwaves with these Tigers postcasts. So fired up to be with you, fired up to bring you all the Tigers coverage in this postcast format. Also fired up to tell you about today's sponsor. And in a moment, when we come back, we're going to wrap it up with the performance of this Tigers bullpen and look ahead to the rest of the series. Tigers Postcast is brought to you by LinkedIn. Are you struggling to close deals? B2B selling is tougher than ever. And that's why I want to tell you all about the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That's right. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. That's what it's all about, right? The sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial. Say that again, 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon to get started. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's talk about the bullpen. I had much better things to say about the bullpen prior to that 9th inning, but such is life when you're typing away and working really hard to make sure you got all your T's crossed and I's dotted for our first ever Tigers postcast, and Will Vest had to go and give up 2 in that meaningless 9th inning. But I think it's worth noting, and Jason Benetti did a great job of pointing this out on the broadcast, that new Major League Baseball rules, if you're down 8, then you can have a position player pitch, which the Twins obviously elected to do, but you got to be up 10 in order to have a position player pitch, because obviously the idea of saving the bullpen was at the forefront of both managers' minds with the doubleheader tomorrow and the extended 4-game series. So the fact that the Tigers offense was kind of almost, I don't want to say strategically, but able to land on 7 runs up until that 8th inning. So only 1 inning was pitched by a position player for the Minnesota Twins, but they were able to get to that bullpen for the Minnesota Twins. And in all total, the Twins used 5 different pitchers, one of them obviously a position player in Willie Castro. But you understand the gist of how important bullpen pitching is in a lopsided game like this, considering the next day being a doubleheader. But for the Tigers, I thought Alex Faedo was really, really good, albeit in a non-stressful situation. When your team has that much of a cushion, obviously it changes the mindset a little bit, but that's not to say his stuff wasn't alive. It wasn't nasty. It wasn't actively breaking, and all kinds of movements that left Twins hitters off balance the entire game. So liked what I saw from Alex Faedo. Now, Alex Chafin got pitched around some base runners and eventually got some batters to chase at the end there. 1 inning of work did allow the 1 hit, 0 earned runs though. And as I mentioned, Will Vest is who got the Tigers bullpen in trouble, because entering today, the Tigers had one of the best bullpen ERAs in all of Major League Baseball. And it's insane what the Royals bullpen is doing, the best in Major League Baseball. But there's been a lot of good, effective bullpen pitching in the early going of this season, and the Tigers certainly fall in that category. So you got to feel good about what this bullpen is doing for the Detroit Tigers. I like what I saw from Faedo as well as Chafin. And Will Vest, obviously just a tough outing. But important for the bullpen to continue to put forth such a solid effort and continue to be a strength of this team as the season progresses, as the month progresses, because as this team continues to find its identity in the early going, there's no mistake, make no mistake about it, that the bullpen has been the strength of the Detroit Tigers. And you were able to rest all those guys in the bullpen. You didn't have to use guys like Jason Foley. The list goes on of who essentially AJ Hinch tomorrow for the doubleheader will have a full lineup card as it relates to the bullpen and be able to strategically and effectively utilize that bullpen as he sees fit. So Tigers and Twins will play a twin bill tomorrow at Comerica Park. And it's one of those weekends that, based on the way it started tonight with the 8-2 win, you got to feel good about the momentum. You got to feel good about the state of that clubhouse right now. Weather playing a factor in it, having the back-to-back off days. So everybody's fresh, everybody's healthy. You got the performance from Tarik Skubal to not have to use a ton of bullpen innings. Faedo did his job with 2 scoreless innings. And this is just a really, really good spot for the Tigers to be in offensively. Defensively, we haven't even talked about how good the defense has been. There wasn't the, Javi Baez made, let me check my notes. Javi Baez did make a nice play in the field in the top of the second there. He also had a throwing error. And if you know me, you know Javi Baez is not my favorite player. In fact, there could be a chance he becomes my all-time least favorite. But let's relax on that. Tonight is a happy show. Tonight's about the good news. Tonight's about the way this Tigers team cruised to a victory from start to finish, and the way they put their best foot forward to start this series, and the optimism that you have that this could be a really, really momentous weekend series against a divisional opponent, and albeit a divisional opponent that's beat up and not necessarily playing great baseball right now, but given the success of the Twins in 2023, entering this season, they were one team that you felt like was probably the favorite to come out of the AL Central. But the Kansas City Royals, the Tigers, the Guardians, it's early April. We're not going to talk about a divisional race because Scott Harris said we haven't earned that right. So let me honor the GM's words. We haven't earned the right to talk about postseason play. Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious from his comments on MLB Network earlier this week, where he essentially said, pump the brakes. Let's not talk about winning games. Why would we want to do that? Let's just talk about the youth of the team and how it's a volatile situation. Obviously, I'm getting a little bit into my own feels here, and that I did. The comments just rubbed me the wrong way. But that's a topic for a later day. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this edition of our Locked On Tigers postcast. Like I mentioned, be with us all season long for Tigers coverage immediately following Tigers games on the Locked On Detroit Sports YouTube page. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. It is free. We want to build this audience, reach all the Tigers fans that we can for what has been a really fun start to the season. Again, 8-4, the old baseball cliche, you take whatever you start and you win 2 out of 3 games. You just do that the rest of the season and you're division champs. You win 8 out of 12 games for the entire season or the duration of the season, you're obviously going to be feeling good about your chances. So my name is Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. And that's the great thing about this, right? We're going to continue to get better with every single show. We're going to figure out these buttons on this side and the lighting on this side. This is all new to me, but we're taking it in stride. I mentioned formerly I was with 97.1 The Ticket, where you turn the microphone on and you talk. So we're working through what we've got here, and just really appreciative to the folks at Locked On for the opportunity to be the voice of Locked On Detroit postcast. The fun just getting started here. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Make sure you join us tomorrow night. Now, it is a straight doubleheader, so we'll just do one postcast after the final out of the second game, and hopefully have a lot of good things to recap as the Tigers take game 1 of the 4-game weekend set over the Minnesota Twins. 8-2, your final. Tarik Skubal, the winning pitcher, now 2-0 on the season. The Tigers are 3-0 in games he starts. Thanks so much for joining us, and hey, we'll see you next time on the Locked On Tigers postcast with me, your host, Jake Riepma. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and talk to you next time.